Good morning, Year 12. Welcome back to Theory. I bet you're loving life right now, but we are almost finished. So we've looked at some of the debates that we have in sociology around certain aspects. So the argument of sociology being a science is quite prominent in the field. We've then got to look at today value freedom or value laden. What that means is like when a researcher is doing their studies, doing their experiments, are they putting their own beliefs and feelings into that research? Okay, so it's another argument that's discussed in sociology quite often. We've then got to look at social policy and how social policy is what's the word I'm looking for? God, it's early in the morning. Influenced by sociology. We then have to look at the relationship between theory and the methods that are used. And I've got a whole new set of research to give you to really help with the method section. And then we are pretty much finished on theory. So I need to have a think about what I'm going to do and what I'm going to set you, because that takes us up to the 15th of June. So from that week, depending on where we are, I imagine we'll still be doing this. I don't really want to start setting you work on crime because I just don't want to do that. So I think I'm going to do you have a lot of research tasks to do. I'm going to want to see like revision for every topic we've looked at. I'm going to want you to watch some documentaries for your AO2. So it'll be nice stuff. It's not going to be too heavy, because I've realised that you've taught yourself a whole massive section or two sections of the course. So it's making sure that you go over those notes, you make sure that you fully understand everything we've looked at, basically. So it's a bit of time for revision, time for reflection, but also giving you some insights into our last topic, the last topic with me in Year 13, which is crime, and then with Sir, beliefs in society, and that's done, finished. Then we're on to revision. So hopefully by about March time, March, April, we should be in a good place. We can get lots of revision done, lots of lots of exam questions and exam techniques and model answers. So we should be in a good stead for whatever happens in May and June. So today then, values in research. Quick recap quiz, because this is the most important part. And yesterday I had an email from Mr. Griffiths, because we are in the midst of rewriting our schemes of work, our lessons, to make sure that they are reflecting the fact that you need to be constantly embedding and reinforcing previous knowledge. Michael Gove, as you know from education, obviously revamped this and wants you to do this 2-year A-level, makes you more intelligent, I think he was arguing, and expands your memory. So you need to make sure that you know it. So these are really important. I'm also going to be in year 13, when we're hopefully back to some kind of normal, setting you questions on family, on education. We'll be doing mini mocks to test your knowledge every couple of weeks or so. So it's going to be hard hitting. So it's a good time now to really make sure that you are going back right to the start of what we did at Year 12 to continue to make sure that you fully understand it. So some questions here that you can think about. A disadvantage of streaming in education. The general trend in births since 1900. Which sociologists are associated with symbolic, interactionism. And then crime statistics are an example of what form. So you can pause this now. Talk to yourself, talk to your dog, talk to your cat, whatever, and then compare it to these. So a disadvantage of streaming is that the students in the lower sets are maybe like disheartened. They might pay less attention to them, the teachers. Higher proportion of lower stream students are from working class or ethnic minorities, and there can be some conflict between them. General trend is a decline. Mead is associated with symbolic interactionism. You could have had Bloomer, who developed that. And then crime statistics are an example of soft statistics, okay? Soft official statistics, lovely. Right, so you can go to your revision from that if you weren't sure. Can't remember what streaming is. Not a clue what symbolic interactionism is. that's where you could develop and go from there. But on to today then, is values and ethics. So look how far we are down we are. It's amazing, so close. Obviously I've done it in a different order, but it's almost finished. We're almost there. So should sociology be value free? Another quick recap quiz there that you can do. I don't think I've put the answers on there for that, but you can always take a picture of that and go away and ones you're not sure of, you can find the answer to, just to continually again reinforce some of that theory that you may have forgotten, or you're not sure of the specifics, the key terminology. I would say for each theory, a good thing to do is split it into AO1, AO2, AO3. So have all your contemporary links, all your researchers in AO2, AO1, or like a key terminology glossary that you could have for each theory, and then AO3, how other perspectives might disagree with it. Within itself, are there any specific problems? So you could have that on a big bit of A3, each theory split into that. Okay, so you can use that to guide some of your revision if needed. So, key term here then for value and ethics in theory is a value. So it's a belief, an idea, a principle that a person has that determines what is correct, desirable and proper. So all of us have values, we have beliefs about certain things, and that's quite important in sociology because every sociologist has a value, has something that they place an emphasis on or an opinion. So some argue that it's possible and desirable for sociologists to keep their subjective values out of research. Others say that to be completely neutral and ignore your own opinions and own values is impossible because you are studying humans studying humans. You're going to have some kind of idea about what you are studying. Okay, so some argue that it's desirable for them to use their values. So if you've got something you're really interested in, then maybe that actually helps in the long run or makes the research better. Okay, so have a think, which side are you on? Do you think that it's desirable to keep them out of research, it's desirable to have them in research, or that it's totally possible for them to be neutral? Now, a social fact is what sociologists are researching. So what they are trying to, not necessarily prove, but what they are trying to research. And remember, when we looked at sociology as a science, if they have a social fact that they have proved to be, well, not proved, but if they have provided evidence to be true, they've got to make sure it's falsifiable by keep testing it, otherwise it's not scientific. So a social fact consists of manners of acting, thinking and feeling external to the individual, where they actually have a control over them. So things like social forces in our environment that influence us that we cannot change or control. Now, some people would argue that things, so they split into two sections here. So some examples are material and non-material. So a material social fact are things that are within the environment that affect us. So technology, our housing arrangements, how populations are distributed, social class. The non-material are things like norms, values, the roles that we play, language, currency, all the rest of it. Okay, so social facts splitting into two, but how and why, excuse me, is that relevant? Well, first, you need to look at three new key terms here. So ology basically means the study of. So sociology is the study of society, psychology is the study of the mind. So ontology, the study of existence. So what things objectively exist in society. Is that social facts? Do they just exist? Epistemology is the study of knowledge. So how do we know things exist? And phenomenology, obviously if we looked at this in social action, is the study of social construct. So how society has made things the way that they are. Then we've got to split, when we're looking at values, split it into objectivity and subjectivity, because, and this is going to come down to, again, interpretivism and positivism. So if you are being objective, you're basing your evidence on facts, scientific knowledge, they're undistorted by emotions or your own bias on something or your own values. So researchers cannot let their own views influence their research. They've got to be completely neutral. So thinking about research methods, which methods allow research to be completely objective? And which theories can be considered to be completely objective, unbiased, and scientific? Then the opposite, so subjectivity, based on personal impressions, influenced by bias. Researchers let their views influence their research. They kind of let it take over. They go a bit native. What methods have we got that are subjective? And then which theories can we argue are also subjective? So this is basically looking at positivism and interpretivism. So our methods that are objective, we would argue like lab experiments are quite objective. Anything that's really structured, that provides us with quantitative research. So our theories that are going to be viewed as objective are our positivist, our functionalists, our Marxists, our feminists. And then on the flip side of that, social action is going to be completely subjective. People are creating their own views and own opinions on things. Unstructured interviews give us qualitative research. So that's quite important for these debates, are bringing in those positivist interpretivists. And then even further within that. So if you can bring in a study that shows either value, people bringing their values into the research or not, then that's showing wider AO2, and that's a positive. So if we say something like trying to be incredibly objective, or okay, not being objective would be something like, or being totally subjective. Why can't I think? Oh no, sorry, objective, right. So let's take Milgram's study with the lab experiment, the electric shocks. He's trying to be as objective as possible because it's carried out in a lab. So we're seeing cause and effect, which means that they aren't bringing their values into the research because they're trying to be as controlled as possible. Okay, so that's one of the best things I would do for this and for sociology to science is to create a big AO2 bank, splitting it into positivist, interpretivist. Reflexivity, this isn't a new keyword, we've looked at it in social action, but it's where they are constantly or consciously, in this frame of mind, aware of the impact that they are having on their findings. So it's basically, reflexivity is reflecting. So thinking about a male bias, an age bias, an ethnic bias, always being aware that they potentially could be impacting their research. So it's used by our social action theorists, our interpretivists, and postmodernists, and they aren't value-free at all. They are as much part of the research as the people involved. So they have to, when they're writing up their report, they have to acknowledge their role in the research. So if you think about any of those studies that we've looked at where the researcher is totally encapsulated and involved in the research, that would be quite a nice one to use here because obviously their values are shaping how they are acting. Okay, so they always have to be reflexive to their own impact on the research. So the argument for value freedom. So the argument that we have to have no values of the researcher in the research are from our positivists. Okay, they think sociology is a science. It should be free at all stages of any kind of bias. So from the sampling method they use, from the research design they use, from the topic to the presentation. But some elements are important. So on the other side of this, our interactionists are arguing that we need to have some views in there because it helps us gain a better understanding of the picture of the group that you are studying. It allows for verstehen, for that empathetic viewpoint, but Weber says that they should keep their own values out of the research and analysis because they're not trying to make judgments. So although it's important, he argues it should be tried to be kept out so that they're not showing a bias. So what I've got for you, so I've uploaded the textbook for you. To use in these pages, note what postmodernist views are along with Marxist and feminist standpoints on values. Then I really like the focus on skills purple pages in the book. I think they are brilliant AO2. So have a look at that, have a practice, the questions on 167. So pause that now and then we'll come back and discuss them. But I do want you to do it. I want you to be active in this. Don't just sit and wait because it will not help you in the long run. So value freedom. It's impossible and undesirable, according to postmodernists. Everybody has values, of course they do, and they influence everything we do. So the objective meta-narratives that we have are there for a purpose. So they can't explain society in its entirety. They're kind of a little bit hollow. Researchers, again, they should be aware of their position and accept their values will shape it. But that's being that reflexivity, isn't it? Being reflective that actually it is going to shape it, but maybe for a positive. Research must have their values included. So sociology, like we're going to look at in social policy, should be there to make society better. Should impact them in a positive way. Without sociologists using their political opinions, using their values, how will society change? But the problem is, how do we know that they aren't changing society to benefit different individuals within society? So it should be, as a sociologist, the job should be to uncover patriarchy from a feminist view, or capitalist exploitation from a Marxist view, not to accept it as it is. And then this is quite an interesting area we need to look at, is where can values come in? Where can the researcher's own views come into the research? So it could be the choice of topic. So if the researcher thinks, actually, I might get more funding if I look at this bit of research, so I'll do that. Believing that it is worth studying just based on their own thing that they are interested in. Think of an example where that could be. So I can think of one already. Anne Oakley, interested in looking at childbirth from a mother's perspective. Obviously, she's incredibly interested in that. That's then swaying which way her research is going to go. And she was very heavily involved. Choice of method. So how you kind of get your participants, a sampling method you use. If in general you are a positivist or an interpretivist, that's going to change your method entirely. You know, are you going to find the same results from an unstructured interview that you would from a questionnaire? Probably not. Analysis. So some of the conclusions are subjective. So what people judge to be normal and abnormal varies between individuals. And presentation. So how they are, if they are presented in written form, then, you know, are you presenting it in a biased way? The words you use, are you cutting out things that, you know, didn't make the cut or aren't significant, instead of leaving in absolutely everything to people to make their own choice and decision? Then I've got three bits of research here that you can have a look at. Are they value free, or are they, we call it value laden, which means that they are laden with values. There's just lots of their own opinions on the research. Then I have a quick question for you. So outline and explain 2 reasons why values may enter sociological research. Now, again, like I have done with sociology as a science, and I think I might have done this for all of the kind of debates, is I've put the mark scheme in there so that you could potentially look at that and create a plan from the mark scheme. So if you're really stuck, that would be my way to go. These little 10 markers are where students struggle the most. I think they struggle with the structure. Some of them start with an introduction, it's not needed. Just 2 bulky paragraphs that reflect 5 bits of knowledge, 3 bits of application and 2 bits of evaluation. 5, 3, 2 in outline and explain. They are good to practice, I would say. 15 minutes, especially on these kind of topics. Values are one that hasn't come up for a couple of years. So the way you want to guide this is if you look at the mark scheme there, you can pick things where so if you go back to that pink graph that we just looked at where values can come into research, you can use that. So how they pick their participants, the choice of method, whether they are an interpretivist or a positivist, reflects what methods they use, research methods. So you only want to pick a good 2 of those. Excuse me. And then your AO2 needs to reflect that. So what research could you bring in that we've looked at that has lots of, the researcher implementing their values or not, and then a bit of analysis. So I have got a model answer here that you could refer back to once you've written it. Or what you could do is read that model answer and create a plan from that as well. Okay, so I will leave it to you, but the more you practice these, the 100% better, because it will show that you are, ultimately what I wanted for you was to have a plan for each topic. So you have a planning pack for each of the modules. Now even better, so the pro of lockdown is that you now have an essay for every block, with me providing you feedback, and I'm trying to provide you as much model answers as I can so that you can pick and take bits from. So the more practice you have with this, the better. What I would say is, obviously I've attached the textbook for Sociology of Science and for this. Do read them, because there are bits in there that not that I've missed out, but just for you to go away and find some AO2 that you can pick up, reread it if you need to boost your knowledge or some of your understanding. I'd start there first. I think the textbooks are great. And when we get back, I have got a copy for you each. Obviously, feel free, if you want to get it on Amazon and get it delivered to your house so that you haven't got to keep reading the PDFs, you can 100% do that. So it's just the same cover as the year 1, but just says year 2.